Welcome to Vermont Today. I'm Terry Gerolman, and my guest today is Paul Hood. Paul is a 21-year resident of Burlington. After 230 years of history, half of which we held the Negroes in slavery, yet we said they had freedom. I mean, isn't that what the Declaration of Independence says? Every man has freedom under God, and yet two-thirds of our population were Negro slaves. And now, 230 years after we began, we still aren't where we want to be? Are we ever going to get there?
I must confess that I don't think we will ever get there in terms of having worldwide peace and justice reigning. I don't think we'll get there. I think, and I'm being perfectly frank with you now, because I used to think that, yeah, we could have total peace, that it would be possible for us human beings to come to our senses and work for peace and for sharing and for good. I don't think so now. I now believe in my last years, and I'm almost 81 years old. I now believe that we will have continuing strife and violence, and that we need to be able to live within the context of the precipice of violence for the rest of our lives, and probably of our own children and grandchildren, if we survive this whole thing. I don't see evidence of its turning around. But if it did turn around, it would be because we had a massive opening of consciousness of the folly of violence uncontrolled in the world. And people say, well, what about the terrorists? They're not ready to join you in that kind of peaceful movement. No, they're not. And neither is my own country. No matter who wins next November, if you think they're going to turn things around and restore our constitutional rights and stop the continuing case for war, I don't see any of the living top candidates espousing the top candidates. Now I'm saying in both parties, I don't hear them saying, well, we'll be out if I'm president, we'll be out in 3 months. They're not saying that at all. They're saying it may be years that we stay there to protect the oil. We stay in terms of protecting the Iraqi democracy in Iraq. What a folly that is, that you can impose democracy on another people at the point of a bayonet? No way. No way.
We don't really have democracy here in America.
No, we don't. We don't. And if we have another terrorist attack, I fully expect that the Bush administration will declare martial law in this country. And we will have a bit of a taste of the torture that we're imposing on other people, imposed upon American citizens. We've already started to do that to our own citizens. And I think these are dark times. And I'm not saying there's no hope, but I'm saying for me the hope is not that there will be universal peace in my lifetime. I don't think there will be. So my question is, how can we live rightly and justly and humanely within a very violent context? That's my question, Terry.
You said all of the candidates, but I would like to note that Dennis Kucinich has promised that he would bring the troops home within 3 months if he is elected president, and I am supporting him for president.
You know, my sweet companion is going to vote for him, and I still haven't made up my mind quite, because I'm sort of torn between supporting the least of the top evils or voting for him. I haven't made up my mind yet. Maybe I'm willing to be convinced, Terry, about him, because he does speak my mind and heart. He would end the war. He would usher in a new era, I do believe.
Well, I think during the primaries, at least through the New Hampshire primary on January 8th, we can support Dennis Kucinich, and we're not sacrificing anything. And if he can get a majority in the primaries, he would be our best hope. And I think we should all be behind him at this point. Everyone that loves democracy and peace and hopes for a better future. He's the only one that I can see that will give us a better world.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Terry.
You spoke about the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. How would you rate those on a terrorist scale? Is that terrorism equal to the terrorism of the so-called terrorism of the Al Qaeda?
I don't see any difference.
Except that in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we murdered several hundred thousand civilians.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, let me rephrase that. There is a difference. I mean, this is unprecedented slaughter on our parts in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But I don't see in a deep sense any difference. I mean, if you die by a nuclear weapon or you die by torture in one of the torture cells we conduct now by the CIA, how is that fundamental? You die. Mm-hmm. And so I think killing is wrong. Killing our fellow human beings is simply a wrong thing to do. Thou shalt not kill. Well, come on. Do we believe that? We may believe it, but we're not acting upon it. We're saying, well, there are conditions, there are circumstances where it's all right to kill our fellow human beings. If they're threatening us, certainly we can kill them then, can't we? Most people say, oh yeah, you probably can. If I'm being threatened, if somebody's breaking in to harm my mother, I'm certainly going to shoot him right between the eyes. Folly, absolute folly. This kind of thinking, this violent kind of thinking, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. They threaten me, I'm going to threaten them. That leads nowhere. It blinds everyone, in my view. I think Gandhi said that.
Well, we're running out of time now. Paul, do you have any last comments that you'd like to make?
I want to say, Terry, that I appreciate the kind of sharing and discussion that you and I have had today. And I believe that if we have some very deep differences of opinion on some subjects, you and I, but I think also that we have some very deep commonalities between us in the way we look at things. And we just touched upon them in a way today. And I hope that at this really dark time in history, and it is the darkest time in the history of my lifetime, over 80-odd years, I hope that if people can come together and truly listen deeply to one another, including people who have ideas that are radically different from ours, even people who may be threatening us, either from afar or from very close at hand, threatening us in our way of life. I hope if we can come together with a willingness to listen and a willingness to talk about how it could be different and how we ourselves, by joining together, can make a difference, then in that I have some hope. And I may be wrong, and I may go down the third time and sink at some point in my life. I will, inevitably. But I just hope what remaining days I have left that I can reach out and genuinely listen deeply to others with differing points of view and the similar points of view, and ask what we can do together to turn the tide that seems to be so inexorably going toward disaster in the world around us. So that's my hope.
Thank you, Paul. And for those of you at home, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next month for another edition of Vermont Today.